Hello Steemians, welcome to the first part in this series of Modo basic tutorials. If you haven't yet installed the 30-day trial of Modo, then go to foundry.com/products and Modo. Click down here, download trial. You have to set up an account, and I believe they send you a link via email. Although that could be wrong because I haven't actually done so, I already own it. So once you've installed it, double click, open, any second now, and this is Modo at its default settings. Now I'm going to go through a few different things that I changed right off the bat, especially with navigation. So before we begin, I'd like to first apologise if you can hear a faint humming in the background. It's actually quite warm for us here in England today, so I really need my fan running. So with that out of the way, the default navigation in Modo is, I find it quite bizarre. I can't quite make head nor tail of it. So what I do first is go to System, click on Preferences, and go down to Input and Remapping, and I change mine to Maya Navigation. As you can see, I mean, if you're used to 3ds Max, Cinema 4D or anything else, by all means use those. My personal preference is Maya Navigation. I use this for most of my 3D applications. Another thing to do, because if I show you as I'm trying to spin around the scene, it actually tumbles round and round, and I find this difficult to get on with. So again, go to System, Preferences, this time go to under Display to OpenGL. Down at the bottom where it says trackball rotation, untick that, and as you can see, it seems to behave a lot better. Now there's a lot going on in the 3D view that frankly I find a little bit distracting. I mean, this is personal preference, but if you'd like to change your settings like I do, click this little gear icon in the top right, and you'll come up with 3D viewport settings or properties. What I do is, first of all, I change the background from gradient to none. I go to visibility and work plane, which, if I show you what work plane is, see this light coloured grid, and it changes orientation according to how your camera is oriented. I'll explain what it is later, but for now, if you just here where it says show work plane, click that. I set it to active because I do use work planes, but I only want to see them when I'm actually using them. So click that and it disappears. I also get rid of the grid on the ground. So show grid, click that to never, and this is much cleaner. I'll show you what this is a bit later, but for now, where you see it says Control Tab to toggle, press Control Tab, that'll get rid of it. If you want it back, Control Tab again, and it'll show up wherever your mouse pointer is. So that's it for setting up. Next I'll create a few primitives and go through navigation with you. So in order to show you the navigation, I've set up a simple scene, created a cube, a sphere, a cylinder. Now all navigation controls They involve the use of holding down the Alt key on a PC or Option on a Mac in combination with different button presses on your mouse. So in order to rotate around the scene, hold down Alt or Option, click and hold the left mouse button and just drag. There you go, spinning around. In order to pan, hold down Alt or Option, click and hold middle mouse button and just drag. That pans you around the scene. And by using Alt or Option and the right mouse button, click and drag left and right, that zooms you in and out. And if you see, as I hover my mouse on this corner, zoom in, it'll zoom into wherever your mouse is, just like that. Now you can just use your scroll wheel on your mouse if you've got one. I'll do the same thing, but it's a little bit jerky. I mean, it's okay if you just want to quickly zoom in, but not as smooth as using the Alt right button. Okay, now if you ever find yourself in a situation where you've absolutely no idea where anything is in your scene and you can't find it, like I've done right now, if you hold down Shift and tap A, it shows all, and everything's right back in the centre of your scene. Next, I'm going to discuss different viewports you have and viewport display options. If you look at the top right, see these two arrows. If you click on that, it opens a traditional 4 viewport setup, whereas this one's top, that's the front view and that's the right view. If you click on any of these, you could change this one, for example, to the left view. This one can be the back view if you like, and this one you can change to bottom or to anything else you like. Now the top, bottom, back, front, right and left, these are what's called orthographic views, wherein there's 0 perspective on these as opposed to this one, which surprisingly enough is called perspective. To make any of these full screen, just click on the 2 arrows again, click again, click that one, that's full screen, click that one. Now the navigation in these viewports is the same, except obviously you can't rotate because there's no perspective. So if you Alt and left click, that's the same as doing Alt middle click, but the zoom works like it does in perspective. So I'll just minimize that one. Again, you can get rid of these by pressing Control and Tab, or bring them back however you like, just by clicking Control and Tab. Now as you can see, this one, you can see a faint bit of shadowing and everything's solid, whereas these are all wireframe. Now if you look in the middle here, that one says default. This is the default view. And these 3 are wireframe, so you can see all the way through your object. What you're seeing is the individual edges that make up the shapes. You can change these. Click on where it says wireframe. You could, for example, have that one solid, this one could be shaded, this one could be default just like that one, and this one you can change to advanced mode. Now it'll probably take a short while to kick in, but as you can see, the shadows are a little bit more realistic on this one. There's a bit of reflection on there. If you click on the 3D viewport settings, go to advanced. You can show shadows. If you've got any light set up in the scene, it'll cast shadows. You can turn the anti-aliasing on, so that'll get rid of any jaggy lines. You see the lines are very smooth now, whereas if you keep an eye on that, I'll turn it off, you can see the individual pixels again. You can use ambient occlusion, which in some circumstances, in more complex shapes, it adds a little bit more shadow into crevices. It's not very effective here, but yeah, have a play with it. Using this mode, the advanced mode, it's OpenGL, so it relies on the power of your graphics card. So if you've got a fairly decent graphics card installed, by all means crank the anti-aliasing up, turn the ambient occlusion on, and away you go. If you haven't got a very good graphics card, or indeed using a laptop, I recommend you don't use it, because it's quite taxing on the system. I certainly wouldn't recommend modelling it in this mode, because you can slow down quite a lot. But to give you a quick idea how things might look when rendered, this is useful at times. So I'll just click that and turn that back to default. As you can see, all the lines, you've got jaggy lines again. But this is the default mode that you're modelling. So next we're going to get on to actually creating something simple. So to begin, all I'm going to do is make sure items is clicked up the top here. Click on any of the shapes, that'll select the entire item. Click delete and say yes to that. Now as you notice, in this list on the right, this is your items list, and this list will contain everything that's in your scene. Currently all we have is a camera and a direct light. When you boot up Modo, you will have, if I press the N key for new, you will have an empty mesh item, and you can tell it's empty because that's greyed out. This mesh item has no geometry inside it. So in order to create some geometry, let me just quickly go back to visibility and turn on the work grid, just so we can see where we're putting this object. I'm going to come here on the left, and this is your tool palette, and you've got different tabs according to what task you want to perform. So if you go to basic, all of your primitives are in here. You've got cubes, spheres, cylinders, cone, torus, a tube, you've got pen and text. If you look closely, these ones have got a little triangle in the corner, and that's to signify that if you press and hold, you have other options underneath. So for example, under cylinder you could have capsule or an arc, and this one you can have a tube or a solid sketch. This one you've got different drawing options, but for now just keep it simple. Click on the cube. Now there's a few ways of creating geometry. You can do it directly in the viewport, whereby you click and drag to define your X and Z, and then click in the middle of this green box. Sorry, I was looking at that line there. Click the green box and drag up, and there you have a cube. When you're at this point, if you've got exact measurements you want, say for example you want this to be a 1 meter cube, you can either type 1 1 1 and press enter, or you can click here, in which case all you have to do is enter once and it will propagate through the 3 dimensions. So now we've got 3 meter box, sorry. While it's in this state, you can still drag on any of these handles to change the size. You can drag on these handles to change where you want to put it, and once you're happy, press the escape key. So just to go through that again, if I quickly select that, delete it, make new mesh item, click, drag across 2 dimensions, click there to propagate across all 3 dimensions again, 2 meters, and I've got a 2 meter cube. Escape, and there's your item. Now, I did say that there were a couple of ways of creating geometry. If you keep an eye on this, as I press Control, you'll see these little grids appear, and that simply means that if I hold down the Control button and click, it'll create a unit cube. Now, 1 unit is currently set to 1 meter. How do I know this? Well, if you go into System Preferences and come under Input to Units, unit system is SI. I could change it to metric, English, a few other different settings. I could change this to kilometers, meters, millimeters, whatever. Have it set to SI and meters, so every unit is 1 meter. So again, if I make sure this is selected, if I press W to move and drag on the handle, just move it out of the way, press escape. If I hold over the sphere, press Control and click, and that's a 1 meter sphere. Again, press W. Let's move both of those out the way. Now, if you notice, I'm moving both at the same time because both these meshes are in the same item. So I'll move those out of the way. I will now create a new item by pressing N on the keyboard, and as you see, that is greyed out and there's nothing in there. If I now hold the Control button down, click on the cone, and we have a cone. If you look here where it says mesh for these different items, well, obviously it can be a bit confusing if you've got a scene with loads of meshes in. To have every one of them called mesh, you can actually come down here where it says name, highlight that, rename that one to cone, click this item, either by clicking straight in here to select the item, or making sure items is highlighted here and clicking directly on the item. And then we're going to rename this one to cube sphere, and as you see, the name changes up here. And believe me, this is quite useful when you've got a scene with quite a lot of meshes in. And just to give you an example, I'll load up my current project shortly. So let's get on to the different terminology: vertices, edges and polygons. So far we've been working in item mode, whereas it selects everything within that item. If I zoom in by pressing the Alt key, right mouse button, into this sphere, click on vertices, Now as you see, as I hover over every vertex, and a vertex is simply a point in 3D space. One vertex on its own doesn't display anything because it has no mass on its own. If I then click with the left mouse button, that one vertex is selected. I could now, if I wanted, press W to move it, and as you can see, it's moving that. Now things are a little bit strange looking because these items are actually smoothed. If I press tab, that's what it looks like unsmoothed. So as you can see, all I've done is drag that one vertex out. You can push it down if you like, and you get strange results. Okay, you can select individually like this. You could press Shift, keep Shift pressed, and add to your selection simply by clicking with the left mouse button. You can take away from your selection by pressing and keeping pressed the Control key and then clicking with the left mouse button. That will take away from your selection. You can right mouse and drag, and anything completely enveloped within that rectangle will be selected. So at the moment only these four are going to be selected because they are within this rectangle. As if I change it to this, see, it's only these ones here. And if you notice, as you drag, it only selects what is facing the camera or facing your view with the right mouse button. If you click off that to deselect, and you do the same holding down the middle mouse button and drag in to bring out the box again, something strange happens, and it actually shows you that you've selected all the way through your object. So you can either right mouse drag to select what's facing you, or right mouse drag to select all the way through. Now this changes depending whether you're in a solid view like this or wireframe like this. So if we now concentrate on this item and go back to vertices, if I right click and drag, you'll notice it selects all the way through. If I middle mouse button click and drag, it only selects what is facing the camera. So for example, if I go back to these views, because these are wireframe, right mouse drag, you can see it selects all the way through. This is from the top, so if I right mouse drag, it selects these ones here and through the back here. If I middle mouse button and drag, and it only selects, as you can see, that one quadrant, because that is all that is facing the camera in this view. So going back to this one, to make it full screen again, change that back to, well, either solid or default. You can click and drag with the left mouse button to paint select, right mouse button drag to do a lasso select. You could change the style of the lasso by right clicking in an empty space, go to lasso style and change it, for example to that, and then you have this kind of selection, and that changes over to the same with the right button, rather the middle mouse button, sorry. So right button only selects what's in front of you, middle mouse button selects all the way through. In Modo there is a concept whereby if nothing is selected, it takes it that everything is selected. Might be a bit difficult to wrap your head around, but once you're used to it, it's quite useful. So for example, we are in vertex mode, As you see with this item, the cone, we have nothing selected, no vertices at all. If I was to press W to move, it'll move all the vertices. If I press R to scale, it'll scale all the vertices. If I press E, it will rotate all. If I now make a selection, press W to move, it will only move those. Same with E for rotate, you could rotate them. And you can, if you want to be more precise with any of these movements like rotation or whatever, you can actually come in here, click and drag to get more precise movements, or even just enter a numeric value, 0, there we go. Same for move, you can either click and drag or use a numeric value, or click and drag on the arrows to move it more precisely. So far we've covered items and vertices, and if you remember, a vertex is just a single point in space. If you either click up here where it says edges, or indeed press the number 2, you get to edge selection mode, and you can see as you hover over this mesh, an edge is highlighted. You can add to your selection again by holding down Shift, click in, or Shift, drag in, or Shift, lasso, or Shift, middle lasso, or deselect completely. And an edge simply spans two vertices. So on this plane here, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 edges, which is made up of 1, 2, 3, 4 vertices, all interconnected by edges. Oh, let's delete that one. Now I just skipped over that, I'll show you. At the moment we've got edges selected. If you want to change that selection to be the vertices that make up all these edges, simply hold down Alt, and as you see, as you hold down Alt, where it says vertices, it now says convert. If you click on that, it changes your selection to all the vertices. Do the same with polygon, and it chooses that polygon. Now a polygon, if I'll convert that back to edges, a polygon is made up of at least 3 edges, and in this case it's full. But if we were to look at the top here, go to polygon mode, or indeed press the number 3, this polygon will then convert that to edges. That's 1, 2, 3 edges and 3 vertices. Equally, if I select all these polygons, I can now convert all those to edges, all those to vertices, or back to polygons. And again, I can add to the selection by holding Shift, paint select, Shift, right mouse button, drag, middle mouse button, drag, and then Control to deselect, Control, middle mouse button to deselect. So we've run through vertices, edges, polygons, and obviously items is all the geometry contained within that one item. Now I might mention that you can actually cut, copy and paste, just like in a word processor, geometry, which is quite handy. So if we go back to this sphere, change it to polygon mode, just change my lasso back to a rectangle. If I now go into the right view, now I'm going to right mouse button, click, that'll select that entire half all the way through the item. Much like in a word processor, if I press Ctrl X, it will cut it. If I then go to this item and press Ctrl V, it will actually paste that geometry into this item. So now this item contains this cube and half of this sphere. I'll go back to that item, the other half of that sphere is now in there, and these two parts of this sphere are no longer connected. I could, if I wanted to, go back to this, and another way of selecting, instead of say clicking, holding shift, click, rotate, click this, click that, click that, in order to have all these faces selected, or rather polygons. You could of course do a middle mouse select, so if I deselect that, middle mouse select, that's all of them. Sometimes this is as easy as that, other times not so much if you've got overlap in geometry. If you wanted to select every single polygon in this item, make sure you're on polygon mode, double click and it'll select all of those polygons. And again, Ctrl X to cut, go back to a cone, Ctrl V to paste. So now in this item we have cone, half a sphere and the cube that used to be in this item, which now contains the rest of that sphere. You can as well, if we go to polygon mode, select all those by double clicking, press Ctrl C to copy. Notice nothing happens on the screen. If I now go back to this item and then press Ctrl V to paste, then W to move, sorry, I'm in polygon mode, select, go back to item mode, W to move. Now both these parts of the sphere are in this item, the original one plus a copy of that one. So it's much like working in a word processor, copy, paste, cut, very handy. Not all 3D applications are this easy to use, and it's one of many reasons why I love Modo. Another handy selection tip, if I go back to item mode, select this. Say for example I wanted to select, now let's go to edges, say if I wanted to select this entire ring of edges from here all the way around. And there's a couple of ways of doing this. You can either click one, hold shift, click the next, and then press the up arrow on your keyboard, or the down arrow, and that will add to the path, and delete. If you go too far, no, does nothing. If I show you with polygons, select one, select the second one, go up all the way around, and there you go. Start at the bottom, 1, 2, up arrow, and it reaches a point where it can no longer guess what the next one will be. I mean, really it should be this one, but for some reason it doesn't quite get you there, but that's a shortcut. If I go back to edge mode, instead of doing this, which yeah, it's quick enough, you can simply double click on a loop of edges. Same with a ring like this. Say for example on this sphere, it's select that entire loop. Same with this one. It's not the same with polygons because it doesn't know whether you want this loop or this one here. So if you double click, all it does is select everything. Same with this. And by the same token, it doesn't work with polygons. But saying that, if you wanted this ring in vertices, well, you've already got the edges selected. If I change it to that one, so you want all the vertices along this line, simply hold down Alt and convert, and there you go. Press 3 to go to polygons. If you then select this loop and then hold Alt, you can convert to vertices, or indeed all the edges. You notice when you've got a ring of edges like this, again you can't convert that to polygons because it doesn't know whether you want this line of polygons or this line of polygons. The selection would have to be like that, and all I did there was did one loop, hold shift, did another loop, then convert, and that'll select that loop for you. So a couple of little ways around doing the same thing. Now if you notice, these meshes, you can actually see through the one side, and that's because these polygons that make up these shapes are actually only one-sided, so they're solid looking at them from this side, but you can see through this side. You can actually change that in settings, but I won't go into that now. So I think that basically covers everything for selections. So just to recap, you have item mode, press 5 or click the icon up here. So that selects everything that is within that item. You have polygons, and it depends which item you're in as to which ones you can select. So for example, I can't select any polygons here because this cube is actually in this item, it's not in this one. So I can select here and here, but that's it because I've only got this item selected. Go back to this one and then I can choose those, but not these. Can add to it there and add to it there. So if say for example you are trying to select polygons, edges or vertices and nothing seems to be happening, check up here which item you're in. If you're not sure because you've got a great big long list of items and they're not renamed appropriately, like these aren't anymore because the cone item no longer contains a cone, and well no, actually it does. The cone item contains a cone, half a sphere and a cube, and the cube sphere only contains 2 halves of the sphere. So either rename things appropriately or click item, go to the items, make sure it's selected, and then you can select polygons or whatever other component you want. So now we've got the basics out of the way, the very basics of navigation and selections. Before we go on, I'll just select these items, press backspace, and that'll delete them. I'll go up here, I'll go to open, go to my desktop, my Modo stuff, nope, design, sorry. project I've been working on. You might have seen it on the on Steemit. This is my current project. So say for example I want to work on this part or this part or this part. I'm in item mode. Then I can go to polygons, choose whichever polygons I want to work off, or edges for example. As you see in here, if I make sure I'm in item selection mode, I've got things renamed to what makes sense to me. Now if you notice this item, it's got a little triangle next to it. If I open that, it's got another item within it. Any of these items you can actually parent to another item. So for example with this hatch, I've got the glass parented to it because this hatch actually, see if it works. Yeah, this hatch is made up of two items, obviously the hatch itself but also the glass. And I've set it up so it'll rotate along here. Probably haven't set it up properly just yet, but if I do that you'll notice the glass travels with this, and then select that, set that back to 0, put it back. Now if I hadn't have parented that to that, let me just drag that out of there so it's no longer parented. I'll now select the hatch and move the hatch. You see the glass stays where it is. So all I'm going to do is press Ctrl Z to undo that, undo again, undo again, undo again, and it's back where it was. So just to give you a little bit of a idea of why I said to change, especially when you've got multiple items in your scene and you're not sure what is what. For example, this gun made up of a few different items. Now while I've got this project open, let me just show you. If I go to default, change it to advanced, you see it took a while to kick in, but you can see its shadows are a little bit more noticeable, a little bit more realistic, how they fall across the shapes. It's by no means perfect, you know, you've got a little bit of messiness there, especially if you zoom in. But you know, it gives you a broad idea of how shadows would fall. And as you can see, little R2 is a little bit shiny there, and you've got a bit of shine on there. And again, if I go back into the options, I've currently got anti-aliasing up to max, turn that off. You can see the lines are a bit more prominent on the meshes. Currently, I'm not sure why, but if I enable ambient occlusion, everything is completely black. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Why? I don't know. Might just be a setting on my computer, something with OpenGL, but as I say, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So there you go, that's what advanced mode looks like on a slightly more complicated scene. Now if I was to open up, or rather start a new scene with this loaded like this, let me just show you what happens. Go to File and click New. If you notice, the old scene, it's still there, but it's invisible. If I click on this, it comes back. And you can actually have different scenes loaded at the same time. Obviously the more complex your scene, you know, it's going to slow down your computer. But say for example I was working on a little R2 down here and I wanted to make a change to him. I could actually select the item, copy it, go into this scene, paste it, and there he is. You see, this scene is completely different from this scene. And now I can do all my modelling in this scene without destroying this one before I commit to any changes. Once I've made any changes in this one, it's then very simple to, again, item, copy, and then paste over to this one after deleting the original. If you want to close any of these scenes and say keep that one, simply right click, close scene. It'll prompt you to save if you made any changes. I'm going to say no, don't save. I'm now going to close this scene. No, don't want to save that one. And now we're just left with the basic untitled scene without any items in it. And we're going to start just playing around shortly with some of the tools. Okay, so for an exercise, let's make sure we're in the centre of the scene. Now, I should have probably mentioned this. You notice you've got different coloured lines, and these colours are replicated down here. So for example, the blue line is your Z line, which is usually your depth. X is your width, and Y, which is green here, what you don't actually get in the viewport. Y is your up and down. So this is positive X, positive Z, or rather positive Z, negative. Positive Y is up, negative is down. So if you don't have the grid on, you quickly see there. And for example, if I turn the scene upside down, that's upside down. So even if you haven't got the grid, you know that you're upside down because that always stays there. Let's move it back. The very centre, that's called the 0 space. So if I was to, if we now make a new mesh item, click N for new. So we've got an empty mesh item. Hold Control and click, and you will notice that the cube is drawn exactly in the centre of the scene, along the X, along the Z, and along the Y. How do I know this? Well, other than it looking like it's in the middle, if you look at the mesh properties, you have the position X, Y and Z here. You can actually move it here if you like, or even just key it in which case that moves it right over there 10 meters away. So move that back to 1. Now that's 1 meter away from the center. So if we move that back to 0 and we move the Y 0.5 meters, because if you remember, it's exactly in the middle of Y, so half of this is half a meter, which equals 500 millimeters. You could also say 50 centimeters and it'll change it back to millimeters. You could also say 0.5 meters, and that's exactly the same, it doesn't change size. Just beware though, if you do enter anything in here, and I'm just going to press 500, you can't actually see your cube because it's that big, you're actually inside it. So I would have to zoom out for miles. Actually it's that big you can't see it, so press Shift A and that centers it in the scene. And you can tell it's massive because you're completely zoomed out and you can no longer see the grid. So if we select polygons, double click, delete, that's now empty. Sorry. Press Shift A, that brings you back to the centre of the scene. If we now press Control, click, we have a 1 meter cube. Now I just want you to play around with a few of these tools. If you stay on polygons, click on a polygon. Now to move a polygon, you can either press the W key to bring up the handles like this, or you can actually just click in here That's the move, that's the scale, that's the rotate. This one's a little bit special, it has bits of all of these three, but get to grips with these first. So if I go move, or again by pressing W, if you notice, if you're in move mode and then you press W again, it takes you out of move mode. Or if you're in move mode, press escape, it takes you out of move mode. So W, and just use the handles. Up in the Y, back in the Z, over in the X. You can zero these out by clicking here, which makes all of these selected. Press 0 and it's back to how it was. So play around with the movement. You can actually use these arrows to skew or move up and down like this, or skew it that way, and again just zero them out. So that's movement. You have rotation. You've got different set of handles, so that will rotate around the Y, this one around the Z, this one around the X, and again click here, zero them out, or use the arrows to change it like that, and again zero, get it back to a normal. And then you have scale. Sorry, yeah, this one scale, this one contains elements of all of them. So if you see here, you've got movement, scale along the different axes, and rotation. If I undo all that by pressing Ctrl Z or Z for my American friends, click that, go to scale. Now you can scale in any of the axes, in all three axes, or a combination of two axes. So let me show you that. If you click in the middle and drag, it'll scale in all three axes. Click in this one, well, it won't scale at all in the Y because it's actually flat, but it'll scale in the X and in the Z. And if you use one of these handles, it'll scale in both of those like this. You can of course come out of that, double click to select all of them, press R or click up here to scale, and then you can scale everything all at once, or scale that way, scale that way, scale across there, scale across those two. Now an interesting thing with scale, let me just select this polygon, I'll go to rotate and let's just make it slightly off. Okay, so I've got this polygon all rotated out of shape, but what if I wanted this flattened? Very simple actually. If you press Alt and convert it to vertices, click on your scale or press R, simply drag down with a Y. Now it will go past it unless, see this little box here where it says negative scale, if you unclick that it'll stop. You can't go below that. That is as far as it'll go, and that is now 100% flat. And if I go to this view, you can see quite easily that is flat. If I undo that a few times, that's how it was originally. Scale it down like that, completely flat. Very, very useful. So I'm going to leave you with that. That is the very basics of Modo. I've covered selection, I've covered making new mesh items, and I've covered the basic tools of movement, rotation and scale. Until next time, thank you for watching, Steemians. In the next video, which I'll hopefully have up in the next couple of days, we'll go through our first little project together. We will make the table lamp that I posted on Steemit. So thank you again for watching. Hope you join me next time. Hit me with a follow if you want to keep up with these projects, and if there's something you don't quite understand or I didn't cover to your satisfaction, please leave me a question in the comments. I'm happy to reply to every comment. Thank you for watching.